Good day from Washington. I am Robert Christian, and this is the Robert Christian Show. Some of the news items that we've been following today out of Burns, Oregon. FBI negotiators have kept channels open today with the remaining occupiers of a rural Oregon wildlife refuge in hopes of ending the nearly 4-week standoff, although the group's leaders have faced new court hearings following their recent arrest. We are following that news story, as I know that everybody else is as well. Meanwhile, the FBI officials have moved aggressively to dispel questions about the shooting death that had happened this last week on Tuesday. One of the most high-profile occupiers of a rural Oregon wildlife refuge. A video appears, however, to show the man reaching for a loaded handgun before being shot by an Oregon state trooper. This is the Robert Christian Show. Stay tuned. And thank you very, very much. All right, folks, let's get back into some of this other stuff. Japan, did you all hear this news story? And this is one that if you happen to have a head full of hair, you will want to pull your hair out. Japan has put its military on high alert for a possible North Korean ballistic missile launch after indicators say that it is preparing for a test firing. 2 people with direct knowledge of this order told Reuters on Friday. Increased activity at North Korea's missile site suggests that they may be ready to launch in the next few weeks, according to these sources, and I think that the world's eyes are on North Korea. A vaccine for the Zika virus, Zika virus, which has been linked to severe birth defects, and thousands of infants could be ready for emergency use before the end of this year. We're going to be keeping our tabs on that because a lot of people are now saying, well, is this really a good time to get pregnant or not? We can say that word on our show. Hey, folks, we have the word pregnant. We have a special guest today joining us. Ron Steele is his name. Steele? There you go. And we're going to be visiting with him, ladies and gentlemen, on his books and get some comedy going. He's known for his comedy writing, supernatural thrillers. That sounds just juicy and a little bit divine to me. What about you all? So we have that. And in hour 2. Now, if you really want to make people angry, you will pay attention to hour 2 because it is going to be on the making of a president. Oh my, and why the debates are so vital. And ladies and gentlemen, they are. We'll be right back. Well, good day, ladies and gentlemen, from the Robert Christian Show. I'm your host, Robert Christian, and on today's live show, folks, this is going to be a show that you don't want to miss. Whatever that you do today, this Friday, tune into the show because we're going to be talking about political figures. We're going to be talking about Hillary Clinton versus all of the other candidates. We're going to be breaking this down, ladies and gentlemen, just the way that we did with the Republican Party. Are we biased on the Robert Christian Show? The answer is no. But I am going to discuss, we're going to get into this with Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State. We're going to be finding out what she did and what she didn't do, and Bernie Sanders, what he did and what he didn't do. And ask this question of everybody today, of any political figure who is sold out to their super PAC teams, their big donors, big corporations that donate to them. Hillary Clinton is one example, not wanting to stand in the fire against Wall Street, to stand against their corrupt behavior on Wall Street because they are a part of her financial backing. And I say, really, Hillary? Really? Today on the Robert Christian Show. Hey everybody, it's great to have you all with the Robert Christian Show today. We have a special guest, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be blowing our mind maybe a little bit. I don't know about you, but when it comes to supernatural stuff, I kind of get into it. I really do. Because there's more than what meets the eye, I think. So could some of this supernatural stuff actually be funny? Well, we're going to find out. Could it be funny? All right, folks. Hey, we are back with you, and welcome, Ron. It is great to have you on the live show.
Thank you very much, Robert. It is a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about, I want to go into it kind of gracefully. Tell us a little bit about who that you are and some of the stuff that you have written.
Well, I'm a retired Navy veteran. I got out in 2001, spent 23 years doing navigation, several different ships. I didn't really start writing till later in life, which is one of the interesting things about what I'm doing. I found out I had a gift for it late in life, so that was kind of a surprise. But once the faucet came on, I couldn't turn it off. So I've written several different books of different genres, ranging from coming-of-age comedies to supernatural thrillers, to short stories, to short story thrillers, to detective mysteries. So it runs the gamut.
So what actually got you started writing? What was it? Maybe because there was a lot of life experiences that you wanted to be able to put down on paper, or was it, hey, here's a novelty idea, I'll just go into writing?
Well, and that's an interesting question, because the actual truth of the matter is, a few years ago, I just started doing motivational quotes on Facebook because I went on Facebook. I wanted to touch base with my old high school classmates. Found out this was a good way to do it. So, and part of being in that Facebook world, I started posting, what they call a short pause, which is a motivational statement to help people out. And then one day, about 4 years ago, almost 5, sitting at one end of the couch is me, my wife sitting at the other end with the dogs in between us. She just looks up and goes, "Hey." I go, "Yeah." She goes, "You need to write a book." "Okay. No, you really need to write a book. Start now. Stop what you're doing. Write a book." And I went, "Why?" She goes, "Because you have a gift. The way you write these pauses is not just something natural. It comes easy to you. I want you to see if you can do it." So I thought to myself, what can I do that would be a good book? What do I know? So I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to let the kids of this generation know how it was back when I grew up. So I wrote a book about growing up in the 60s as a kid, an 8-year-old to 11-year-old. So I wrote The Streets of Our Youth. It only took me 7 weeks. It was very well received, and it was really, really funny. So at that point, I found out, well, I've got a gift that I didn't know I had, because it was easy for me. So once the faucet, or spigot as you will, is open, you can't turn it off. So as soon as I was done with that, I started thinking, well, what do you want to do next? So I went into a supernatural story, because while I was in the Navy, I read about 2,000 books. You have a lot of spare time when you're on deployment. And I really liked Stephen King and Teen Kuntz, and then I got into James Patterson and John Sanford. So those were the places I leaned. So I thought I'd see if I could pull off something a little Stephen King-ish, and I wrote The Globe. And then I wrote a sequel to the first one that was well received, called The Avenues of Adolescence. The first one's The Streets of Our Youth. And it was even funnier than the first one. So, and it goes from there.
Well, here's a very ingenious question. When you are writing, I mean, trust me, I know that writing, people, you have to have a forte with that. It's either you're going to be really good at it, or you're really going to be horrible at it. But when you're writing, and you're writing these stories, do you ever find yourself sitting back and laughing, just thinking if it were a movie, and here you are writing the script? What can I do? What can those people do, these characters do, to make me laugh?
I don't know if it's so much like that, but definitely there's always the thoughts of certain books, of a movie, especially the one that I just released. These have characters in it that the situations they find themselves in, that's not a serious scenario, is almost always funny. So yes, I try to picture actors I'd like to see in that role. I try to pretend in my mind what they would look like doing the words I've got on the page, even though that doesn't always work out that way. So I would say yes, every writer's dream eventually is to have a movie made out of his work, until he sees the movie maybe. But I'm not that. concerned. I would love. We actually are trying to do that right now with my publicist. We're trying to get a treatment done for a couple of them. So that is always true. My writing style is completely different in that I do the driving at night. Probably wonder what that is.
Yeah, well, go ahead. What is it?
Well, I don't look beyond the headlights. So let's say I'm going to be driving from, let's say, New York to San Francisco. And I'm going to do all night driving because I'm a vampire and I need to sleep in the day. So at night, while I'm writing, I don't see past the headlights. I can go about a page or so in advance, and I do not honestly know what's going to be there. I don't outline my stories. I don't set it up. I don't know how I want to end it. I didn't know the ending to my last book until 15 pages before it. So my style is what I call writing at night in the headlights. You know where you're going. The road's going there, but to get there, you can only see so far in advance.
Well, in your opinion, Ron, what has helped you or encouraged you beyond your wife? And although she's vital to you, but what else is it that has promoted you to continue writing the books that you've written and the way that you've written them?
Motivation is, I know in my heart that I think they're good books because I've read so many. I read my own and I laugh out loud, or I shiver, or I think. And it's not to be arrogant, it's just I honestly think they're good, and I wanted to get other people to read my work. I also have a goal that I would like to get to a point where my writing sustains the livelihood I'd like to have, because my wife and I want to open a shelter for battered women. We want to open a store for people from hurricanes and tornadoes and floods to give them free necessities and toiletries and clothes, and I could be able to do that. So I really do want to help folks out, and this is an avenue to do that for me. At the same time, though, I love it when somebody reads one of my books and gets on, gives me an email and saying, I just got told to be quiet on an airplane. That happened because they were laughing out loud. So I just love my work to be seen.
So how are people able to get a hold of your work? You're, I guess, with Amazon, correct?
I'm with a couple of different places. I actually have a domain, ronstelle.com. RONSTELLE, and that has all my books listed. It has my book club. It has sponsors and ways that you can get free things from me. I'm willing to sign a book for anybody that would like to send it to me and send it back to them at my expense at this point, because if people like a personalized book, I'm happy to do that for them. I am on Amazon in hardback and Kindle. I'm on Barnes & Noble. At this point right now, we're at that point where we think we're going to be in Barnes & Noble as the actual hardbacks on display. So that's next, and I'm just waiting for the treatments for the movies and anything else that might come our way. I just pray and hope that it happens. Okay, so it's Ron Stelle, Stelle, correct? Correct.
All right. Hey, I had it wrong on the graphic, but I fixed it. Everybody. So, hey, if people have a complaint, make sure that you write it really small in the box provided. Anyway, Ron, I like things to be right. I just and I was like, you know what? That's not what I have on the screen. So I was like, whoops, let me hurry up and change this. So in your writing, I wrote several years ago my life story, my autobiography, I guess it would be called, and I'm with you as far as writing in the dark. Because when I was writing that, I knew the outcome because I lived through it. But how I was going to be able to put that on paper, that was the question. How was it all going to play out? Because I wanted it to play out in the reader's mind as to what was really going on, and put their feet at that same place. And that's a little bit difficult. Now, when you're talking about comedy, of course, I love comedy. I think a lot of our viewers do as well. And the suspense of it all, the supernatural funniness. Do you find the world of the supernatural really as something comical, or no?
It's not so much the role of the supernatural, like the story The Globe. It's the characters that are experiencing the supernatural event, having normal things that happen in life to all of us. I try to be very detailed in my writing so that you can put yourself in the scenario. They may be facing an entity that could destroy the world if they don't win this battle of wits. But in the meantime, they're still going to have to go to bed the night before or have some supper. And the comedy would be coming. Let's say you're having supper and somebody snorts, coughs, and blows out milk, and then somebody over there blows it out too, and then they just all start laughing. That's the kind of comedy I intertwine into my books. Even though it's a serious subject matter, I'm going to bring in the day-to-day life things so the character's more real for you, so you can relate to them better. I do believe that doing that makes the characters more believable. And I just can't keep a person always serious, always fighting, always in action. You're going to have some real life in there, and I think that's what sets those books apart.
Well, if somebody was going through, and you know what, we have, because we have podcasts, we have people that will download the podcast or the video from places like YouTube. Love YouTube, but they will download it and watch it and go on about their day. But if somebody right now was going through an airport and they found one of your books, which one to you is the funniest, and which one to you do you think would people get the most out of as far as comedy is concerned?
Well, pure comedy are the two ones of growing up in the 60s. They're designed to be funny. Every scenario, like Christmas, birthdays, fireworks, smashing your bike into a curb so you can wipe out the best. Things that we did outside that people kind of lost touch with the Thumbs generation. So I wanted to bring that to show folks my age to remember what it was like, and to show folks my children's and grandchildren's age what it was like. And but every book has funny in it. My short story books would be good for playing because you can read a couple of whole stories and not have to be interrupted. But there's funny in everything that I do. There's not a book I put out that doesn't have a lot of humor, but the streets of our youth and the avenues of adolescence are nothing but humor.
Oh, a great question. A great one. Ron, do you consider yourself in the real world, outside of your book, but do you consider yourself to be a funny man?
My friends seem to think so. I can't resist making a jab when I see something all lighthearted. And I tend to just make statements out of the blue that you're not expecting. I think that's just part of my character. But, I think you should be light in life. Nowadays, especially, people are so morose and down with all the things going on. I think it's good if you can just, lighten up a little bit and laugh and remember that, this is a ride.
Well, Ron, let's take a short trip back. Folks, we're going to get in a time warp machine. Let's take a short trip back, just a few short years ago, back in the 1960s. I'm a child or a product of the 60s. I'll put it that way. I'm a product. Hey, try this product. So I'm a product of the 60s. But, Ron, from back in the 1960s, and I can surely say that this is a fact into the 1970s, all right, when I was a young little kid. But, Ron, in the 60s, do you think that life was a much easier time than it is today?
Without question.
Really?
And I'm sure that my parents thought the same thing about theirs, and their parents thought the same thing about theirs. Simpler means you had quite a bit more trust in your fellow human being back there. Doors didn't get locked. I could walk into my friend's house and I could be scolded by my friend's parents. I'm sure a lot of the terrible things that happen that we see we're bombarded with by the internet. That's the difference. We're seeing everything that happens every time it happens, whereas when we were growing up, you only saw something occasionally on the news or the radio. So we were freer to be ourselves without worry and fear. So I do believe that being outside helps round a person out to be exercised and to use your imagination to come up with games to play or things to do. I'm not knocking. I've got kids and grandkids, and this is it, But I think everyone should have a time where they go outside and they enjoy it. The 60s were interesting. My first book starts on November 23rd, 1963. What? Kennedy. I remember that. I remember that clearly, being in my third grade class and have the teacher come in and send us home. The only thing that we were upset about as 9-year-olds is that we weren't going to be able to watch cartoons Saturday.
Let me be not boring, but let me ask you a personal question, Ron. Because you mentioned Kennedy. I think, in my opinion, that he's still, and in history, is going to always go down as being one of the best presidents that the U.S. has ever had.
Absolutely.
But
he did pay a pitch. It's amazing. Yeah.
Now, I was born, for those that want to know where I was hatched, here's where I was hatched. It wasn't just a birthing issue. I was hatched. No, I'm trying to be funny. But I was born in the same hospital almost a year to date later, after JFK was pronounced dead there in Dallas. Very same hospital. But where were you when that happened?
That's interesting you would say that. I'm from Houston.
Wow.
So he was in Houston at the Houston Coliseum doing a speech the night before that happened. And my dad had mentioned that he knew someone that went to see him, but he didn't. But he had been there. So as a 9-year-old, he doesn't know a whole lot about it. But, I mean, I was aware the President of the United States had been there. And then the next day I was sitting in my third grade class at Andy Anderson Elementary when the teacher came in crying, saying, students, our president's been shot. I want everybody to go home. And we're like, we're 9-year-olds, so we're like, oh, that's terrible. And then I wonder what I'm going to have for a treat when I get home, because kids. But yeah, it was a defining moment of my generation right there, or the beginning of it. And I found it to be a good starting point to start a story about life in the 60s.
I mean, looking at the life in the 2000s now, as it is, and anymore kids have the iPod, they have their iPhone, they have their computer. I mean, everything is electronical that way. They have instant access to virtually everything on the earth, or anything on the earth. If it's not in their home, they can look it up on their computer or their phone. Hey, call it up. But back then, though, we didn't have that kind of technology the way that we do today. So what is it? Let's look at kids for a second. What is it that kids today are really missing out on?
Well, first of all, I think they miss out on using their imagination more. Having to use an imagination to make up stories and games to play. I had to go to the library if I wanted to find anything out and trudge through books until I got to the thing I was looking for. Now, do I think that having Google and having Wikipedia is great? Well, as a writer, it's beyond awesome, because I can have all the facts I need to put into my book right there. But do I think a child should have that access? No. I think to develop someone well-rounded, they have to be a little bit of pain, have to use some effort to get something done. Need to go out and take a walk to the library and find that book and find what you need to do and study it. It develops your character a little bit better. That's just my opinion.
Back when I was a kid growing up, we owned the rocks in the front yard, but we just rented the dirt.
Right, there you go.
But I mean, back in the day, I mean, that's what kids played with, was the dirt and the rocks and the mud, getting all muddy and just dirty from being outside, and But I think that as well, that life was a very much more simpler of a time back then than it is today. So it's odd, but it's fascinating that you bring the 1960s into one of your books. And in that way, because, looking at it from a 1960s perspective, Ron, and here you are in 2016 now, does it sort of kind of make you smile looking back in history?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm nostalgic beyond words. I love anything retro, anything that comes to that period. I mean, I grew up as a child in the 60s and then became a teenager. I saw all the great events during then at different times, so it was a great time. I'm not knocking any other time, but that was my time, and that's what I knew. And I still say to this day, children need to have playtime where they use their imagination. They should read rather than I'll wait for the movie. Oh, that's fine, but reading gives you something you can't get from a movie. It gives you the ability to use your imagination more, to see what's going to happen in your mind, and then go see a movie and see if it clicks. But I didn't always read as a kid, but when I started, I couldn't turn it off. I love it, and that's probably one of the reasons I decided to continue writing after the first book.
Ron, for me, I can't say that I have been really a good reader. ever. I mean, of course I'll sit and read. I'll go through the news and okay, that's all one thing. But my forte as a kid was tearing apart radios and putting them back together. I mean, hey, I guess I was a geek that way. I wanted to know how they worked, what made a radio work. And then, well, of course, dismantling furniture. I did that a time or three. But, I mean, what little kid hasn't? But, those were, from a child's perspective, it was a very simpler time, but kids today would say, oh, my God, that was boring. How could you live like that? So, Ron, how did you grow up to be the man that you are today?
Well, it's a lot of different factors. I had to pretty much, we fended for ourselves. We left in the morning in the summer and came back when it got dark to eat, and nobody cared. Nobody had to say. So we developed our own world. We did the things that we wanted to do, and we knew where the limitations were. We weren't stupid. We knew what not to do. And
sure,
as each year goes by, I went into the Navy, and that put me in a different place, as it were. I was also a rock musician before that, so I was doing a lot of different things because I love life. I wanted to experience different things, and I think all of that accumulates into the person you become. I do think that I had a great upbringing in that regard. That I was able. We had 16 kids on my block that were within 3 years of each other from third grade on, all the way through high school. So that's a lot of kids. We had football games, we had Super Bowls, we had played war, we played pranks on people, the whole 9 yards. It was fun. I do believe that your foundation as a child shapes to who you are as a human being, as an adult. And I don't think that changes much unless something traumatic happens in your life that alters your perception and changes you. Otherwise, I think you're pretty much who you are from about 16 on.
Well, here's a very ingenious thought, because I don't know if you are familiar with who Del Shores is, the movie director Del Shores. He produced the movie Sordid Lives. Very, very funny movie and show that was set from back in the I believe it was the 70s, on they're from Texas. But Del Shores, he's been on the show. But with his show, the movie Sordid Lives, the characters that are in that movie, and subsequently there was also on the series Sordid Lives. All of these characters were real life characters in his life. So, Ron, in your book, the funny things, the sad things, the good times, the bad times, are the characters that you write about in your book. Were those actual characters in your life?
The two books of growing up, the Streets of Our Youth and the Avenues of Adolescence, all the characters in there are real people. The names have been changed to protect the innocent, but they're all based. Now, this was many years ago, so I was writing on something that was pretty much 50 years ago. So I brought out singular memories of things I had a good time, and I built stories around them. Did they all happen exactly the way the story's written? Of course not. But they did happen, and it's a very similar feel, if you will. So every one of those books are people that were part of my life, and I'm in the book too. I'm probably the main character because it's coming from my perspective. And it was a lot of fun, and I think that's what made it easy, is I found out that I could create a story from a singular memory that pretty much came along as the same thing that actually happened, but maybe a little bit embellished for those who needed to laugh a little harder. The other books, the supernatural thrillers and the detective mysteries, those are just people I've created out of my head.
That is absolutely incredible. That is some of the best writing and writing styles and technique that I think that any author could have. Hang on, if you will, Ron, with us. We're going to take a short break, but when we get back, I do want to get into a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, and how those years from back in the 60s influenced your writing skills today.
Okay.
I think it's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Robert Christian Show, where your voice, your opinion, they do matter. And visit us on the web, robertchristianshow.com. We'll be right back. gentlemen, I'm Robert Christian with the Robert Christian Show, live today beginning at 3 p.m. Pacific time, every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, for the Robert Christian Show. Tune in live, as you can watch it on your computer, on your phone, your iPad, your iPod. So tune in to robertchristianshow.com/live, and there you will see two options. One is for channel 1, and the second option there will be for channel 2. So hey, tune in and see what we are all about. On today's show, in the first hour, the Republican debate. Was it a game show or a game changer for the Republican Party? What do you actually think about it? And in hour 2, objecting by reasons of religious faith, why that some extreme religious, far right-wing religious groups keep on a warpath when it comes to LGBTs, their marriage, their families, what they like and what they don't like. Whose business is it really? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, a mass exodus out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church. We're going to be getting into that, hook, line, and sinker today. That and more today on the Robert Christian Show, beginning, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, beginning at 3 p.m. Pacific, that is 6 p.m. Eastern, right here, live. And again, our website, robertchristianshow.com. You'll be glad you tuned in, trust me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, after that little break, but actually, you know what? The for those that want to know, the show that the promo is actually talking about, we already did that show, and it was really a good one. So if you all missed it, you missed it. We were talking about the Republican clown car, and like a freight train running off the end of the train track, and I mean, it's just a mess. So yeah, we've been talking a lot about the debate, not just the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party as well, and sitting back and laughing at it. I still don't get it, why some people get so furious when it comes to politics. To me, I it's like a game. It's like going to a freaking circus, if you ask me. It is this year anyway. What do you think? All right, folks, we have our special guest that is with us. I had to put that in there. But, Ron, it is great to have you back, of course, for the second half hour of today's live show.
Well, it's, again, pleasure to be here, and I'm having a great time.
So, Ron, growing up in the 1960s, I mean, I can identify with growing up in the 1970s. As some of my most earliest childhood memories are from that era. But I think that we're talking about presidents a little bit earlier. I think the very first president that I remember being inaugurated was Carter. As I remember, as Carter, and we all sat. We were watching, or listening to this on the radio. Schools used to do that a long time ago, and so we were like, "Wow, hey, that's kind of cool." Okay, we were listening to it, although we did not comprehend really what was going on. But back in the '60s, 10 years prior. You had mentioned that more or less that life was simpler for kids, maybe even for adults. But what was the number one thing back then that families suffered or had to go through nationwide? Do you remember any of it?
Vietnam War. Probably. I mean, the assassination of Kennedy was traumatic. When I look back on it from an adult's perspective, and see the folks the way they were. Camelot was bombed. It was it scared people. It put people that life actually happens and that anybody can die. I think it was a life-changing event for everybody. Nobody felt as safe anymore. The Cold War was going on. There were many different things. We were afraid of Russia. They're going to send the nukes. Are we going to send the nukes? That was all a very real thing. And I remember we would do drills in school where we get under our desk like that's going to help in an atomic bomb, but a kid doesn't know. I remember Bay of Pigs, which was a very, very dangerous moment in our history where we could have had a nuclear war any minute during that entire scenario. So it was a life-changing time back then. There was lines drawn. You had the hippies start to come out, and then you had the folks that didn't want to see any of that. So there was a great division among the youth and the older, not too unlike you see in every generation. Some wanted peace and love, and the other one wanted to have, we got to go to war because that's what we do. Vietnam divided the country pretty good. So I think that was probably one of the more influential things for the young adults in that time period, more than anything else.
Well, what I think that Ron, what I'm trying to do and to put together for viewers and podcast listeners, as far as your writing, as far as your books, of how the characters within the books, how the content within those books was written. With the background that you have, not just in the military, but growing up, because I don't care how good or of a writer or how bad of a writer that anybody is. The fact is that life experiences, on a personal note, always seem to get into the pages of a book that they're writing. So, Ron, tell us about that.
Well, I was a bit of a sickly child. I had polio when I was young, and it crossed my eyes, and I was very thin. My legs didn't develop very well, so I came out of that okay. I'm okay. Everything's fine. No problem. But I really turned to comic books. And comic books, to me, I love the superheroes. Oh, my God. The Superman television show, I never missed it. I got every one of the original Marvel comic books. Everything you're seeing on the screen now, I grew up when it was actually happening new. So that was, and Tarzan was one of my favorites. But that background of me escaping because I was a small person and the bully thing could happen. And I won't say I was really bullied because I always stood up for myself, but I really identified with superheroes and characters. And I always loved the comedies back then, Jackie Gleason, The Honeymooners. So I think that combination of heroes and humor weaved itself into my mind, if you will, and it never ever left. I guess I would tell jokes and make people laugh as I got older, but it never escaped me as far as the writing until later in life. But it's always been there, and I can draw upon it. It's like I may not remember the keys I'm supposed to take when I walk out the door, but I'll tell you, I can remember a singular incident from 50 years ago and create a story around it. And I do believe that for me, there was lots of heroes in the comic books. There was the Batman TV show, even if it was campy. Johnny Quest was a cartoon. People my age will remember anything that had a hero in it. And I still feel that way today. I love hero stories. I love people that step up to the plate and make things better. I'm very much an American. I love America. I love God. So I'm good.
Well, Ron, your military expertise or field in the days that you were in the military. First, I want to thank you for doing that. Absolutely, I've got military in my family, and actually, my brother-in-law is one of the latest ones in my family that now is suffering due to cancer due to the war in Iraq. And what a horrifying event that was. But in your own world, I guess, when you were aboard ship, doing your own thing, did you even think back then that one day, I want to put some stuff down on paper and start writing? Did you ever think about that?
I actually did do something like that. It wasn't really something I thought about. I took college in the Navy to get a degree, and the writing class that I took motivated me to write a short story about an event that occurred to me. That was funny. I wrote it all out, typed it, stuffed it in an envelope, and sent it to the New York Post. They sent it back about 3 months later saying, thank you, but we're not ready. It wasn't edited. It didn't have any there was no way it was ready for professional printing, but I didn't know what I was doing. But at that point, it was really easy for me to do that at that time. It just didn't parlay into writing a book. When they came back, no, I go, okay, next, let me go skydiving, whatever's next. So I've always tried different things. I've been a rock musician. I've been on game shows on television. I love to expand horizons. But I'll tell you what, I've been over to, I've had 9 deployments where I was in Europe, so I've been just about everywhere you can go over there. And some of my stories, I parlay that. The one about the globe takes place in Pompeii, Italy, which is where Mount Vesuvius erupted and covered all those folks. So I've been there about 4 times. So I use that. And I guess some of the way the folks are in Europe, they're a lot slower paced. They're a lot laid back. So some of that also I picked up on as far as life in general, that it's probably a little better to slow down a little bit. We have a society of let's go now. And I try to not to do that. Sometimes I can't, but I do try to kick back and smell the roses instead of just see them.
Well, would you say that America and Americans are high strung?
Yes.
That was quick.
Yeah. I mean, people you see every day, half the time they're doing this. So there's so much going on that you're trying to stay on top of. That's why I say it was simpler during the 60s, right? There was this much going on. Now there's this much going on, and we as human beings want to be on top of that. So if you're traveling in 7 different directions, something's not going to work out as well for you. So you're either super organized and you're so able to control yourself to do only one thing at a time that if you're not that, you're gonna get a little scatterbrained. So.
It's bizarre that you talk about that, because my partner and I, we were talking not long ago about television and markets. I mean, I look at what's going on in England quite a lot. BBC, that group, versus what happens in the United States. And I told him, I said, you know what, look, it's like in the United States, our media market and even book writing, it has become so sterilized, because not open necessarily, but very sterilized. But if you look at European television and that model, you're like, oh my God, how do these people do this on national television? So is the United States, are we really the big brother here? Or is Europe and their model the big brother? What do you think?
I thought, on a side note, the same thing. The first time I was going to a club in, I guess it was Italy, it's like 10 o'clock at night, and we're going out to go dancing or whatever, and I see a 10-year-old kid walk in. He gets on the dance floor and starts dancing. I'm like, what? They don't have any alcohol rules over there. But they don't have near the drunks. You know why? Because they're raised with alcohol at the table. They're raised not to just have it socially and all that. And so they don't have all the preconceived stereotypes or laws that have to be in place. They have a different outlook on how life is. So they're more open. They're more open generally to just about anything than America is, because they've had, first of all, they've been around on that continent a lot longer to go through, many, many cycles of life passed down. America's got 230 years of that, which comes from over there, but because you have the melting pot, it all gets kind of misconstrued. So I think that probably we are a little bit more restricted, and some things I think you should be restricted on. I don't think kids need to watch, man-eating monsters eating people's faces. I just don't think a child needs to see that. So I do think some restrictions should be in place. My books, they're PG-13 for the most part, because there are some cussing in there. I'm a sailor. So but I don't do graphic sex and I don't do graphic violence. But I definitely make you nervous and afraid and look around your corner on my scary ones. But I do it like Alfred Hitchcock did. I'm making you think of what might have happened or what could happen, and let your imagination do the work for you. You don't have to display everything up front.
Ron, you have me on the edge of my seat, but let me ask you straight up this question. As far as military and books, okay, I'm trying to put this together, but have you ever thought about writing a book? Now, I'm not giving you any more to do, I hope, but have you thought about writing a book about the military or about a military, but in a very comical sense? Not just the blood and gloom and all of this that we see on the nightly news, but you see my point.
My book about the military will come. It just hasn't come yet. I've got plenty. Ooh. I got some stories for the military, but it's going to be funny. It's probably going to be more like McHale's Navy than, Periscope Down or what have you. It's something that will be funny. I'll incorporate the serious aspects of it, but for the most part, it'll be the day-to-day life on a ship can be quite funny. It can be quite humdrum and boring too. But yeah, that would be something for me that would typically go much more in the humor section because that's the way I view it. There were times that were very difficult when we did what's called cutting squares outside Iraq. Just doing 2-mile squares on the ship for 3 months, just to do gunfire support. That's what ships do when they're sitting there. You can't go in port, you can't do anything. You're on the ship, so you either work out or read. And I did both. So yeah, I'll do a book on the Navy, but I've got to make sure that it's time right. They come to me when it's time to write it.
It is amazing. So how many books now have you written?
I have 6 novels, 2 of which are a culmination of short stories, so I don't know if you would call them a novel, but they're a book. I have 2 books of short stories. I have 2 coming-of-age books. I've got a supernatural thriller. I've got 2 detective murder mysteries, and I'm writing another, I don't know if you call it supernatural thriller or horror. I'm doing one right now that I'm really like that hasn't, I'm posting a little bit of it on Facebook for people to get a taste. It's going to be something. I think this is another one I'm going to want to do a movie with as much. So I'm all over the place because I'm able to do it, I guess. And my wife wants me to do a children's story. I'd have to tone down my brain a little bit to do that because I'm naturally going to be they're going to speak it like it was. The only thing about my books that get a PG-13 rating is you're going to get an F-bomb now and again. You're going to get some of that, but it's just people talking. And even kids talk like that. If you recall, when we were 12 and 13, you used every cuss word in the book with your friends.
Oh,
we
sure.
all did. We all did. So in the book, they're doing it too because that's how it really was. But, yeah.
Okay, so where can people pick up a copy of your book? Is it online? Is it in ebook form or hardback or what?
If you go to ronstelle.com, I'm a domain name. That's what they call it. So I thought that was kind of funny. It has all the books in there, and all you do is click on, and it'll take you to the Amazon site. Or if you prefer, you can just go to Amazon and write my name in, and it'll bring it up. They'll bring up all 7 books. They have hardback and ebook. You can do Kindle or you can do PDF. You can go to book. You can do a Nook or you can do a hardback with Barnes and Noble. Now, they are, like I said, if you get one of my books in your hardback and you want to sign it, you just message me. You can message me on my website at ronstelle.com, and I will show you where to send it, and I'll sign it and send it back to you at my cost if you would like to do that. So all the books are available. We're trying, like I said, right now we're in the midst of getting them into the bookstores, the actual outlets. Not that that's where everybody goes anymore, but I want to have those available at Barnes and Noble and things like that. But they're very simple, just my name.
Ron, I am very impressed with you, with your humor, with looking back at. I mean, it's really sort of kind of fun looking back at life when it was a much simpler time. And looking back at it in our childhood, I mean, back when I started in media, I will never forget it, Ron, as a funny note. And I'll say this, and then I'll ask you what was one of the most funniest things that ever happened to you. But for me, I was sitting at a radio station there in Houston, my first time on the air as a host. Here I had this huge board, the light in front of my face, and as soon as the light started flashing, telling me that I was on the air, that the mic was live, and that was it, I just sat there. I was stone-faced, and then I started laughing uncontrollably, laughing, and that's what people all over Houston were hearing was this guy laughing. But to me, that was just so funny. But since then, people can't shut me up. So what about you, Ron?
Well, I'll give away one of the stories in one of the other books as one of the situations. Imagine yourself being in a 9th grade rock and roll band, and you're going to play Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild. And your bass player's father sets up what we call the gig for you to go play a live show. It's going to be on television, and it's going to be televised in Houston. Wow, the girls will love that. I'll be able to ask anybody out I want, okay? So we get all the instruments together, and we take off, and we go to the KPRC in Houston's television station, or was it 33? We get in there, and I'm thinking, we used to have a show called Larry King Show, which was like an American bandstand show where you could have guests on there that would play the music, or they'd lip sync it or such, and a dance show. That's what we thought we were going on. Only the bass player, Moby, knew it was not to be. So when we got there, we walk. The girl at the receptionist says, "You're over there in lot B or whatever." We walk in there, and he says, "Set up over there." And I look over there, and there's like a Cracker Barrel and some hay and some a saddle, and I'm like, wait a minute. So this doesn't look much like a dance show. So we go over there and set it all up. And then I get a stagehand walks by. I go, "Can you tell me what this show is?" And he goes, "Well, sure, partner. This is the Don Mahoney and Gina Claire with the Kitty Trooper show." What? This was a kitty show where the little third and fourth graders come out with cowboy hats and things, and the two main people were like Roy Rogers and Dell Evans. And they come walking over to us, and the guy's actually blind, so he's putting his hand out over there, and we're like, I'm just in my head, I go, how do I get out of this? Oh my God, how do I get out of this? And so we waited, and we went ahead and played Born to be Wild Loud. People were holding their ears, the kids were crying. Don Mahoney looked frightened, and it was a catastrophe. And if you see the way it's written in the book, it'll make you laugh out loud because it's such a surprise. I've had things like that happen on this ship once. I walked onto the bridge wing and started singing some Neil Diamond song because I thought the guy in front of me was my chief petty officer. It turns around, it's the captain. You don't go out on the bridge wing and start singing when your captain's out there as a respect. So, little things. I've just had probably 10,000 things that were funny happen to me throughout my life. I just seem to walk into them.
But, I would imagine that he has done the same thing. And talking about live television, I remember back in the day doing live television, and trust me, it's difficult. If you can't see the clock, you don't know what time it is. Well, I do now, but back then, and then you have sets that fall apart, and here you are trying not to fall apart yourself. Ron, it is absolutely ridiculous. I've seen, we're having an earthquake on camera, you name it. But, do you remember, speaking of Houston, this sort of sideline, Ron, do you remember Marvin Zindler?
Yes. Marvin Zindler, Eyewitness News. Yeah, you got it.
He was on Channel 13. He passed away about 2 years ago. And I did a little bit of research on him, as well as Dr. Red Duke. You might remember him, too. He was on KPRC. But I did some research on Marvin. He actually was an attorney. And he was a massive, big-name corporate attorney that turned into an advocate for the consumers. Which that's where he got his gig, I guess, on television.
Sure.
But Ron, have you thought about going back into music or back into into television?
Well, here's the plan. If everything works out fine and I'm graced with a successful writing career that catapults me to a place where I can decide how I want to live, then I want to have a recording studio, and I play drums, bass, and guitar, so I'd like to make my own album, my own music, just for me to start with. I don't have any illusions of grandeur or going out on the road, and I'm too old for that. But yeah, I would love to do something like that because it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I plan on at the point in time when it's right to go ahead and do that. Television, that depends on how this career goes. I may be on television, and that's fine, whatever it takes. Here it is. You either like my work or you don't. Either it blows open and everything's, I get elevated to a status of being a celebrity, and that's fine. If not, that's fine because I love my life the way it is.
Absolutely. Well, Ron, I tell you what, you're a celebrity here on the Robert Christian Show. We have some of the top people in their field, and I enjoy every time that I'm able to interview people. in their walk of life, if it's a book author, if it is a teacher, if it's a scientist, because I always learn something, and I know that everybody else learns something and walks away from an interview with something that is powerful that they did not know, that aha moment. So, Ron, last question for you. What was your aha moment in life?
I was 23 years old, long hair, still trying to play in the bands, and I had an epiphany that I wanted to serve my country. I said, I have the freedom here to be able to do all of this, so I want to give back. So I went ahead and I decided, literally in a few hours of my life, I decided to join the Navy, cut my hair, and go in and serve. I just ended up staying because I love traveling so much. I love going overseas and being able to see all these great places. So I would say that was the aha moment, that if you love your country and you love what is given to you, then give back. And I want to continue to give back in other ways, as this goes on.
Well, Ron, I want to, I guess, end on a high note, but as I do so with the interview portion of today's live show, once again, is to thank you. Because, there is not enough young men and women who have the audacity, the mental audacity, to think out of the box and to think that, maybe they can do something better. My nephew actually just ended up late last week, in Korea. And he is just now in, I think it's the Army. He was in, I think it's the Army. Anyway, he's now over in Korea. And my stepfather served in the Korean conflict. And I know what happened to him, and I know what can happen to other folks that are in the military. But I salute them, because no matter what, that they're there and willing to put their life before everybody else.
Awesome. I completely agree with you.
Well, Ron, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I'd love to have you back again, and I'm going to look for one of your books.
Please do. I think that you'll enjoy it.
That'll be great. I'm going to look for it. So quickly, again, people can go to your website, right, to get and order the books there. Is that right?
That's correct.
Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, go to Ron Stelle, Stelle. That's, you say it's Stelle, right?
No.
Yeah, okay. .com. That's it. And there you can contact Ron if you'd like to contact him. I would imagine he would be happy to hear from you.
Sure.
And of course, do check out his books. He has 6 books that are, I guess, all presently linked up through his website. So that is awesome. So visit him, ladies and gentlemen, online. And Ron, once again, it is a pleasure having you on today's live show.
Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you in the future.
All right. Not a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Ron. And hey, Ron, take care. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, Ron. Wow, what an ingenious man, and what a fantastic, eye-opening experience. You know what? I think that everybody needs to have an aha moment. I asked Ron what his aha moment was, and you know what, folks? I've got to say, for me, I have an aha moment every single time that I go on a live show. I really do. And what about you? So, hey, folks, visit the website, ronstelle.com, and do look for his books and see kind of what he's about. I love great humor. And Ron, you know what? He has served our country. He's been aboard ship. He served our country. He has decided that maybe in his life that there is something that he can offer. There is something that he can do to help other folks and to help humanity in his own way, his own light. And so he has decided, hey, guess what? Hey, I can start writing some stuff down. Although, howbeit, it might be funny for some. You know what? I think everybody has funny moments in their life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Robert Christian Show, where your voice, your opinion do matter. Stick around, ladies and gentlemen, for hour 2 of today's live show. Oh my goodness gracious. We have a B-roll today coming in. And we're going to be talking about it, folks, the making of a president and why the debates are so vital for the president. I'm Robert Christian. Stay tuned. We'll be back.